MrBeast tweeted out that he had created an app with a simple premise. Hold your finger on the phone longer than anyone else and you win $25,000. Little did he know, this simple app would destroy his reputation twice. So the app was fittingly called Finger on the App. Once the competition started, you had to keep your finger on your screen in the app at all times. If you lifted it, tried to switch fingers, or switched apps for even a millisecond, you'd lose. However, if you played with friends who had Bluetooth enabled on their phones, you could earn up to 3 extra lives. It's a simple concept, but MrBeast wanted to give people time to practice anyway, so he launched the app about a week early with a practice mode. And in less than 24 hours, it was the #1 game on the App Store. Now, to prevent cheating, players learned that they would have to sometimes drag their finger to these little blue bubbles that would randomly appear. But it didn't stop people from trying. We'll talk about what happened to them later. So the game launches on June 30th, and it's immediately a huge success, with over 1.2 million people competing. But it wouldn't take long for problems to start to pop up. Only a few hours in, players on Twitter began reporting that the game had a major bug. You could have your finger on the app the whole time, and suddenly the "you lost" screen would just pop up. Based on the videos I've found of this happening, it didn't look like the player's fault either. In every video, their finger is clearly on the app the whole time. Well, the most likely culprit was grossly sweat. The sweat from holding the same finger on a warm screen for hours would confuse the touchscreen and cause the app to think that the player removed their finger. But the problems were only just beginning. Eventually, people have to leave their houses. Well, when doing so, the app would sometimes lose connection to the server in the switch from Wi-Fi to a cellular signal, and the player would get a message that they lost, even though they never took their finger off the app. But what about players who cleared their whole schedule and could just stay home and do this all day, like streamers? Well, they would have to fight against the worst problem of all: other people. Trolls were hopping around streams, donating small amounts of money under the name HeyZRee. When the streamer would try to thank them for their donation, this would happen.
Oh, HeyZRee, I appreciate the... Oh my god!
I don't know what that means.
And it would happen a lot.
HeyZRee.
Ja.
Das ist ein Samsung-Gerät.
Are you serious?
No!
It's honestly really funny, but I mean, I do feel bad for them. That's a pretty awful way to go. Not long after this, players started to discover that not only would they have to fight off glitches and trolls, they'd also be going up against cheaters. These cheaters were attaching styluses to things like 3D printers, fans, mixers, really anything that moved, to try and win without actually playing. Luckily, the app was so sensitive that the less advanced solutions would usually just end up messing up and getting disqualified on their own. But what about the ones that didn't mess up? Luckily, right before the game went live, the app developers pushed out an update that added cheat detection. They could detect patterns and how much pressure was being put on the phone screen. On top of that, later in the competition, they even changed the circle time to throw off unmanned robots. Now, you might be thinking that this competition would be over quickly, especially with all the problems I've mentioned so far. Well, the overall player count dropped fast, but 56 hours in, the app still had 13 players competing. So MrBeast did something to try and drop those numbers even lower. He sent all the remaining players to the moon to compete for $100,000. Okay, not really, but honestly, I think we can all see that actually being a MrBeast video 10 years from now. Okay, so actually, when you signed up in the app, you had to put in your phone number. So MrBeast started calling these numbers to try and get people to lose. It's like if the Minecraft server owner came over and griefed your house. But what are you gonna do? They own the server. Well, I guess you could probably just find a new server. Luckily, his plan didn't work, and everyone he tried to call was on Do Not Disturb, or used their parents' phone number to sign up, or was just playing on an iPad. One who did pick up was offered $2,000 to take their finger off, but they refused. More players started losing, but MrBeast wanted to end the challenge even faster. Any longer, and it could get dangerous. Every remaining player had stayed up over 2.5 days at this point, which honestly kind of just sounds like a night before exams, but it's not something that's healthy, especially for the average MrBeast fan. So he offered $5,000 to 2 fans to take their fingers off, and they were smart because they both did. Wait, no, what the f? That's not what's supposed to happen. 68 hours in, 6 people were left, and he offered all of them $8,500 to quit, eventually upping it to $10,000 when 5 people were left. Finally, 70 hours after the start, he tweeted out that there were 4 people left and that he would just be ending it there. Instead of one person walking away with $25,000, they would all be walking away with $20,000. But what happened next was heartbreaking. There were a few streamers who made it all the way to the end, and the moment they saw MrBeast's tweet, you could see the happiness on their faces. So they took their fingers off and went to go check their phone to see if MrBeast had texted or called them. But nothing was there. When MrBeast tweeted an hour later that all 4 winners had been contacted, that's when the panic really started to set in. Despite playing the full 70 hours, they somehow didn't win. So what happened? Well, according to MrBeast, anyone who wasn't one of those 4 people he had contacted but was still playing did so by time traveling. So it was possible to change the time and date in your phone settings to before the competition started, which seems simple, but it would let you right back in. That way, if you lost, you could just keep playing. However, this wouldn't actually let you win because the server would know what time you connected to it. It was kinda obvious you cheated if you connected 2 hours before the competition ended. But not as obvious as me asking you to press the like button to help me out in the YouTube algorithm. So, if everyone else claiming to have won just time traveled, why did hundreds of people claim that players like Lil Uzi's New Patek, Sheck It Up, and Chris Caden played legitimately? Most were streaming the whole time, so what happened? Somehow, they got disconnected from the game's servers without actually getting a message telling them that they lost. In Chris's case, about 10 hours before the competition ended, he left the house. When switching from his Wi-Fi to the cellular network, he must have been disconnected from the server just long enough for it to disqualify him. This part is just me theorizing, but I think that he didn't get a "you lost" message because once his phone reconnected to the internet, his IP address was now different because he was now on his phone's network and not his home IP. So, to the server, it looks like a brand new connection from someone who time traveled to get back in. Another player named MistFox encountered a similar issue, but well, this one I feel a lot less bad about. He was playing on an iPad and left to go to his friend's house, but his iPad didn't have a cellular connection. So as soon as he left the house, his Wi-Fi turned off, the server disqualified him, but he could still keep playing. It wasn't until after the competition ended that he realized, wait, you don't get internet outside my house. Now, of course, they could all just be lying. Maybe everyone did time travel. But considering how many people this happened to, and how many streamers it happened to, I'm almost certain it's a glitch. Now, I wouldn't consider any of this to actually be MrBeast's fault, and I'm not just saying that because I'm wearing a MrBeast shirt. I bought it just for this video. No, MrBeast didn't code the app. The people that made the big red boot did. And no, I'm not kidding, they were actually the ones who made this app. But players were still very unhappy with MrBeast. Some people even went as far as calling the app a scam and claiming that it was rigged. So it came as a bit of a shock when just 6 months later, MrBeast announced that he was doing it again. And this time, things ended even worse. Even from the start, Finger on the App 2 had a lot of problems. Originally, the challenge was supposed to launch on December 29th, 2020. But just 4 days before it was to begin, MrBeast announced that it would be delayed 55 days. I'll talk about why in a second. Like last time, the app was available to download early so you could practice. but so many people downloaded the app that the servers just couldn't keep up. This was likely because this time, the first place prize was upped to $100,000. Players with Android devices could also play this time, and MrBeast had gained 11 million subscribers since the last app. Now this time, the app was being developed by MrBeast's own game studio, Beast Games, and they were the ones who advised him to delay it by 55 days. They told him that they would need that much time to ensure there would be no bugs, and so they could prepare to have so many players. So the launch date was moved to February 19th of 2021. Even with this massive delay, February eventually rolled around, and the app was still clearly not ready. A few weeks before the challenge was set to begin, the app glitched. The timer counting down to the start of the challenge hit 0 early, and the start date in the settings said that the challenge would begin on December 31st, 1979. I actually don't even think MrBeast was alive then. These glitches persisted over the next few weeks, and one night before the game was supposed to launch, they were still happening. Nobody knew what was going on, and there was just complete radio silence from MrBeast. The launch day rolls around and still nothing. Even days later, there was still no update on what happened. As far as I could find, there was actually never any announcement or reasoning behind the competition never launching. Instead, the app was silently updated nearly a week later with a new start date of March 20th. On March 14th, MrBeast tweeted out the same thing, confirming the start date. Luckily, this was the last delay. But before I discuss how the competition went down, I should probably explain what was different from Finger on the App 1. Like last time, you could get extra lives, but not the same way as before. You could earn them in battle mode, where you'd face off against another random player. It was a good way to practice, and whoever won would earn cookies. You could spend these virtual cookies on extra lives. If you just wanted to skip all that, you could instead just pay for them. A lot of people opted to just buy them because battle mode would often just glitch and not work properly. And for most of the time before the competition, it just didn't work at all. I should probably also mention that since the last Finger on the App, MrBeast had now grown his channel by almost 50%, with another 17.3 million subscribers. So it came as a bit of a shock when the player count at the start of Finger on the App 2 was more or less the same as the first one. If I had to guess, all the glitches from last time and the constant delays are what caused such a low player count. Those who chose to skip it probably made the right choice, because there were more glitches than last time. The most frustrating one was probably just randomly losing. You could have your finger on the app the whole time, but if your internet or the servers lagged, you'd suddenly be met with the "you just wasted 12 hours of your life" screen. Now, this competition was also sponsored by the Lord's mobile app, which was also giving away a ton of money. And when you lost, it would sometimes open up an advertisement for it in your web browser. Many players thought that they had lost because the ad popped up randomly, not realizing that they probably lost due to disconnecting or, again, the sweat problem. Imagine you called off work to do this challenge, you're a day and a half in, you're just beyond exhausted, and you look away for a second, and when you look back, it's just MrBeast shouting through the screen. Another big problem was that if you accidentally touch the screen with another finger or part of your hand, you just instantly lose. I imagine this was put in to prevent cheating by not allowing players to switch off with each other like some sneakily did last time, but it seemed to cause more problems for actual players than cheaters. Perhaps the most frustrating glitch of all is that any extra lives you had would seemingly disappear and reappear at random. This would mean that even if you had 3 extra lives left, you could lose while they're glitched and not get the chance to use any of them. Seeing as how lives cost real money, it wasn't a good look for Beast Boy. On top of all this, the bots were back, and a lot of them seemed to be doing better than last time. However, MrBeast had a trick up his sleeve this time. time. About 7 hours into the competition, bombs would appear on screen that you would have to dodge or get disqualified. Seeing as how the robots just flung a stylus around on screen, they were pretty much instantly defeated. As the competition continued on, the app began receiving thousands of negative reviews from players who had lost due to glitches. And the Beast Games Twitter was on overdrive, trying to respond to the thousands of tweets they'd received about the problems. There were so many glitches and problems this time that the competition was actually down to just 10 people only 31 hours after it began. Like last time, MrBeast began offering money for those final 10 to take their fingers off early. And most did. 2 days and 3 hours after the competition began, SwagBacon123 was crowned the winner and walked away with $100,000. And yes, that is actually his name. He thinks it's cringe too. As you can imagine, the replies to this news were a sea of salty responses from those who lost due to all the previously mentioned issues. MrBeast's reputation in the eyes of many fans had been tarnished. Although for a second time the problems weren't his fault, it was still his competition and his name on the line. Luckily, all the players had lost is time, as those who didn't get to use their extra lives got a refund. But it probably doesn't come as much of a surprise that there has yet to be a finger on the app 3, and there probably never will be. MrBeast's channel is now triple the size it was back then, so I don't think he could run another one even if he wanted to. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's any of the things people on Twitter called him because of this competition. In fact, he's far, far from it. This man is actually a saint. And I'm not just saying that because of all the people that for some reason seem to think I look like him.